So welcome to this second roundtable, now fresh after the coffee and the very interesting talks in between. Thank you very much, because it's not my birthday, but I got a present, and this is these marvelous panelists that I have the honor to moderate today. So thank you very much, and I think this is a very, very interesting roundtable, because now we bring all this discussion, which is very important, the discussion before public policy and strategy and European strategy, down to earth, and we need to connect these two worlds. We need to connect the world of those that are implementing, doing, and finding opportunities, and also many barriers eventually, with all this public policy and strategic thinking. And that's what we aim doing here today. Thank you very much for being with us. I think you are leveraging, all these lightning speed developing AI and other technologies, connecting technologies among themselves, and also, implementing them in eventually organizations that are not that light, but evolving at the same path, and that have leverages, and we heard before, and that eventually are slower in changing and have cultures. And we also have this EU context in which we're having, all these very sophisticated legislation we were mentioning before, and we are dependent on foreign technologies. We are fragmented, and we eventually also don't have that much, as we also heard before, own infrastructure. So actually, you are being, to me, real heroes, the heroes of today's world, and we want to extract all this knowledge from you today, because I guess you're heroes not because you want to be heroes, but because we're now in a survival mode. I think AI is no longer, a technology for efficiency or whatever. It's core business, it's core capacity building, and it is survival mode, and it's survival mode for us companies, for society, and of course for the European Union. And we need to understand, how is this happening, and how can we keep pace with it, especially because we also have a responsibility to do it also in a certain way, to implement these technologies and create this new world on the basis of our European values, and you are doing it. So let's talk about this now. So Ricardo, maybe we start with you. Ricardo Ramos is CEO of Spain and Southwest Europe region of Siemens Mobility. Huge responsibility.
Thank you.
Yes, taking us from one place to the other. Deutsche Bahn is not yours, but this type of industry. So what are the use cases that you're running now? What is your experience today? How are you leveraging on AI for your business? And how do you envisage this to develop in a 5 years time scheme?
Well, I think AI is now a clear lever for all the companies here for gaining competitiveness. Mm-hmm. The main reason is because it's bringing efficiency and, of course, productivity. And it's a matter of time that everybody is using it. So therefore, it's not why we have now the luxury to decide whether we use it or not. We have to, right? And now, clearly, in at least in Siemens Mobility, we see a very clear impact, how AI is now impacting our business, our day-to-day business. And I have a few examples. For instance, for managing large we have internal productivity, but there is also a clear impact on our external and on our product portfolio, which is towards our customers. No? Talking about internal productivity, for instance, we are using AI now for helping our engineers to manage large amount of requirements in bidding phase, in the execution phase, to manage also knowledge. And it's something which not everybody is talking about, but when you have LLMs models that have been trained with your own specifications, for instance, or your product specifications, the engineers can easily detect whether what they are doing has been done before. And therefore, thanks to AI, the engineers are quickly not repeating what others have done, but immediately just already implementing what has been done in other projects, right? Things like that. It's very important for the adoption of the AI that it's part and is embedded within the value chain of the company. Having use cases which are isolated from the value chains, yes, it will be, you will learn about them, but it will not have a real impact. But when you embedded the AI into your blockchain, then you can see immediately which is the impact. From the external side, for instance, we have products now that are interfacing with our customers in a totally different way. We have a very typical case, we call it the control center of a railway station, for instance, in which if there was a problem, now the user has to go to an error code, take the guide manual, he never understood, he was calling us. Now he has a complete new, different interface, he's just typing, what is the problem? And the system is directly answering, this is the problem, this is what has happened. So the way we are interfacing is completely different. And it's not only us who are gaining productivity, it's the customer who is also gaining productivity because they are resolving the problems much before than before, much faster than before. So that's why it's so important that we implement AI in all these aspects. Now looking ahead for 5 years, no, you were asking what is going to happen in 5 years. I think there are several things that, from my point of view, should happen. And first is on standardization. Now we have complete different type of data lakes. We listen a lot in the panel before how this is done. We have different regulations, and as much as we standardize, as much as we have the same regulation that other regions or other continents, then we will be much easy to compete with them. We will have much access to data, and therefore our AI models will be able to learn more from others as well, and we will, of course, develop faster the technology or our businesses. Very important for me also in 5 years' time is whether the use cases that we are all using now are able to be certified. Now AI is always coming with us, but there is always a human supervision. We were talking before that sometimes they make mistakes, and it's true, they make mistakes, so everything has to be supervised. But in 5 years' time, I can imagine that we have models that can be certified and we can rely on the outcome. And therefore, we will even gain much more productivity. Of course, we see now how the agentic AI is coming and is becoming a real disruption for personal productivity, for instance. And I can see that this will be really something that in 5 years' time, everybody here, everybody in this room, will have at least 1 or 2 agents supporting your email, supporting your individual productivity, right? So I think this is going to happen in 5 years' time.
Thank you very much. Yes, also if you put tokenization together with this agentic AI, this is mind-blowing.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Luis, so what is the one decision slowing Europe down the most? Or maybe if you have a couple of, it's okay too.
Okay.
But, what are the barriers?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me here. Well, first of all, GMV is a Spanish company, but with a very strong foothold in Germany since 40 years now. And I like to remind that our company exists because of European policies, particularly in aerospace. And connecting with the previous table, I think that working at European levels creates opportunities to develop new companies. Okay, just by chance, I started this week at the headquarters of the European Commission in Madrid, and there was a presentation by the director of IMD, which is the creator of the most common competitiveness index, and he said that there may be 12 pessimistic sometimes in Europe when we think about ourselves. Europe is not a country. I mean, comparing Europe versus US or China is not fair. There are many realities inside Europe. We have very competitive countries in Europe. The truth is that the big economies in Europe maybe are lagging behind the US or China. And Spain is not a very good performance. We run something like 38 worldwide. Okay, we have the Draghi report that was mentioned in the previous table. So we have a footprint, a plan to improve things. And if Mr. Draghi makes a very thoughtful analysis and put a lot of levers to work. I'm not going to make simple things. I think it's not very simple things, but okay, it's clear that market fragmentation is a very important issue. It's like equivalent to a tariff for maybe 40% for products, maybe 100% for services. So that's clearly a burden. We have cultural issues. We have clearly not enough investment. We are not in the scale that you see in the US or in China. And talent is also an issue, but we don't play it very well in this arena. Something like 22% of the most relevant AI researchers have studied in Europe, but only 40% are working for UA. So we are sporting the talent. We have the talent, but they don't create value inside our companies. As a proxy, we see that wages, salaries in the software development arena in the United States are twice or 4 times that what we see in Europe. So this is something to reflect. It's not something that we should change via labor laws, I hope. I hope nobody goes in this direction, but it's a factor, that's something that we have to work out inside the companies. Okay, so, but I think that the official scapegoat is the regulation. Okay, and if I have to be a single one, I have to do this regulation, starting with there is regulation that creates a fragmented market, which makes it complex to work in the different countries. And in the digital space, we have a proliferation of many regulations, which are very, very difficult to cope with for big companies, but particularly for SMEs is a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and we see more and more. In particular, in the arena of AI, we have the AI Act, which is subject to analysis, and I hope that we go towards a more lightweight approximations and implementation, but clearly this might create a gap with other economies. In any case, I have to say that the economy is not everything. Okay, we want to live in a different way, maybe with respect to other areas of the world. I mean, human rights is important, and I want to stay this way. So I want to stay that. So, in short, how do we cope with this environment? Well, we see regulation as a given fact. We are not going to change it, and we are not going to live. So we work to live within. I mean, comply or die. That is the question. You want to put it this way. So we have prepared to go with this AI Act by implementing a management system for AI solutions. There is a standard for the 2001, and then you have a footprint to build the AI inside your internal machinery, and that's the way that we have prepared ourselves to cope with this new regulation.
You also mentioned SMEs in particular. So do you also feel those SMEs that are suppliers of you eventually are also coping with all these elements that they have to implement, or is this being a showstopper?
They're struggling with that, and in particular in some areas, think about medical devices, for instance. Startups in that arena, then you have a very, very long way until you get this certification. You have to survive all this path, so this is definitely an issue. Mm.
Okay, so survival time until adaptation to AI mode. Thank you very, very much. So you mentioned already, somehow, indirectly, eventually, the European reality versus abroad. And in this sense, I wanted to ask you, Manuel Lavín is CEO of GFT Spain. To what extent are non-European AI technologies embedded in critical processes? And
yeah, so
this is not an easy question.
No, I mean, the question is very easy because the answer short is yes. So in all sense, no. But first, I would like to start saying that thank you for calling us heroes. Hopefully not in a couple of years you will call us villains, no? Because we're the ones implementing AI and helping the spread out of AI worldwide. Coming to your question, are those strategic technologies embedded in strategic processes? I would say short answer is obviously yes. And if you analyze the potentially 5 layers that we have when we talk about technology, in each of every layer, we have a big dependency from external countries outside the European Union and even outside Europe. If we start with the very, very basic ones, so raw materials, yes, we still have a dependency. Not only because we are exporting most of it, but also internally, we have the capability to have those materials, but the regulation coming again is not easy. So trying to open a mine in Europe is not easy. So we have probably the largest mine resources in Europe that we could be, or we could at least get some independency, but due to regulation, that is also going to be, and it's very, very difficult to get. You go one step up, you go into our hardware infrastructure. And this is very weird because we in Europe are the ones producing the machines, producing the chips, the microchips, but we are not producing the microchips. So one of the main exporters of machinery to produce microchips is a Dutch company called ASML, but we are not producing them. So we are producing them in China, US, and Taiwan. So we are fully dependent on what is coming out from the hardware infrastructure. No? And you go one step up, NVIDIA topics and all the GPUs, so it's fully dependent into that. Also on the hardware infrastructure, we go to the cloud providers. I'm not going to say we are fully dependent of cloud providers because otherwise Osmar will kill me because to be honest, this system is really taking a step forward within the European market. But the 3 main hyperscalers, still Americans. We've got hyperscalers coming from China. Within Europe, we are starting to build it. And in this case, the system is one example. Telefonica is one example. And in some cases, also in specific verticals, we have also players that are doing it quite well. And I guess our colleague from IndraMind will talk about it. But especially in those topics, yes, we are kind of really finding a good way, but still we are quite dependent there. One step up, software infrastructure. Yes, we have some European software companies, not many. But now what is, when we talk about now on AI software infrastructure is more about the big LLMs. And if you start naming them, I don't see many European names. So you go to Anthropic, you go to OpenAI, you name them. We still see most of them coming from outside. And the last layer would be about services. That's where we can still find some independency on the service side. That's where, yes, there is a big European companies that can provide those kind of services within AI and be independent there. So does it mean that we can be full stack independent? No. But I guess that we could fight in 2 different ways. On a specific industries that are strategic, we are starting to do that. And I would say security, defense, aerospace is one that we are putting a lot of effort there. But also we need to see how we can really look for a sovereignty, not the full stack, but really on the layers that are adding more value to the clients and to us, no, to the European industry as such. And that's where we can have a place to fight, no? And there would be, and we were discussing that in the coffee, there is going to be a next layer, a 6th layer, which is a space. And that, I mean, the battle is not yet fought. It's starting to be on the game. And there is still probably a good chance, opportunity also for Europe to take one step forward and be able to really play as a worldwide champions. So short question is yes, we are highly dependent. If you do the deep dive, we could try to really start thinking on how we can become more sovereign in a specific both industries and different layers of the complete value chain.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. So I turn to you, John. John Munilla, Business Development Director of IndraMind. Where is the biggest gap between AI potential and the real execution? And I think you cover many industries and have a very broad view to answer this.
Thank you, Almudena, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, first of all, and very interesting topics in the session before on the public sector, GDPR, regulation, many of the areas that we face today, and I faced in previous professional experiences, so I'm glad to connect and interchange those conversations with you during the lunch. So before we get into that question, Almudena, I would like to follow up on the technological sovereignty that was touched by Manuel. And I think we do need some technological sovereignty. As you know, Indra is pushing this significantly in specific sectors like defense, security, also aerospace. I also agree with Thomas. It's not the one size fits all. In some areas where you might not need or that dimension might not be as critical or strategic, it might not be needed. In others, we do really think that geopolitical context is pushing us towards having certain sovereignty, EU sovereignty, towards that strategic autonomy. And it's not just for the sake of the strategic autonomy, I think it's also for the sake of leveraging this momentum to create industry for ourselves, for Europe as a continent. We do really need to take the opportunity, the challenge to develop the industry to a greater extent because of this situation nowadays. So I think it's twofold. One of them is the sovereignty and the strategic autonomy, but also the opportunity that we have to create industry and to develop capabilities in Europe. Going to your question, Almudena, sorry for this parenthesis. The main gap, I would say, or the main challenge I see from the potential to the execution, we see it daily. I would say is mainly the gap between the testing or the lab towards the execution. So sometimes, AI is very complex. It's only 2 words, AI, but the whole cycle is very complex, from the data ingestion, through the AI modeling, through the monitoring, through deployment. Sometimes you need to deploy on the edge. It's not, you don't have a CPD and you have to deploy on a satellite or on a device. So it has a lot of complexity. That works very well on the lab many times. But once you have to deploy on a trusted, secure, governed, reliable environment, it makes things more and more difficult. So we are pushing for a industrialized AI procedure and platform. So we are really pushing the development of AI in a production mode through coherent end-to-end system that can develop AI from the very beginning, which is the data sourcing, data management, to the deployment of the AI. And I would like to stress the importance of deployment, because once you have to deploy, particularly in regulated sectors like health or public areas, the constraints for going into production are much higher. So I think that is a very important one, Almudena.
Excellent. Yep. We always come to regulation. But I feel it's very difficult to leverage, the Europe we want with the Europe we need to build to be competitive. And this is always the big thing. So turning into, really scaling up. So, okay, we all have seen pilots or developed small projects, but we want to focus now on the real business-changing use cases. So, Ricardo, would you share with us a use case that already scaled in your company or that you know about, and also share the real impact that you have found out of it?
Yes, of course. We have already, it's not only 1 or 2, we have several use cases which are already scaled up. And I would like also first how we manage that, because to really scale up a use case, you really need your organization to believe in that. And that's why I was mentioning before, it's very important that the use cases are embedded in your value chain. If they are just isolated laboratory things, they will never scale up. The first thing is, when you are building your use case, you need to put someone which is sitting down next to the engineer, for instance, that is going to do the job. And then it was very funny because I saw how we did one for the bidding purposes. And then there is a system manager, it's an engineer who is building the complete system. And then the AI engineer will say, now you have to tell me exactly, absolutely every single movement, interaction you do with your computer. I need to check this, I need to check that, and she was taking notes. And suddenly, 3 months later, we have an automatic tool that was exactly doing the same like the engineer. which was known really value add. The first 2 or 3 weeks of a bidding process is not really value add because it's just we are just processing the requirements. And it was amazing, and it was the way how the engineers immediately saw they are going to take out the 2-3 weeks of boring stuff. And then it was immediately absorbed and embraced by the engineering team. But we have another scale up which was very important because it's not only that we increase the productivity, but we also prevent mistakes. We all the engineering companies, we make a lot of engineering, and in this engineering you made a lot of mistakes. Some of them are discovered in a very late stage, so you need to go back to root one, to square one, and then do it again. If I have an AI and it's a use case which is already a scale up, in which the AI is telling the engineers, are you sure you want to do that? Because in the last project, you did different. In the last, I'm doing signaling for railways, in the last station you put a different configuration parameter here. And then the engineer is saying, oh, it's true, I made a mistake. So in real time, he is already fixing the problems. So that's another use case that is already being used massively in our organization. And this was a little bit more difficult to scale up because, of course, we need to deal with, we are all human beings, and the constant change management process is not the same depending on who you are. But one of the things we did in order to scale up completely is that the AI is completely embedded in the engineering tool. So it was not a matter of use it or not, it's already there and it's supporting the engineer to use it. And we have several other use cases. For instance, we have a translator. We are working from Siemens Mobility Spain. We are working in more than 35 countries around the world. And therefore, we need a lot of translations. So we have developed our own AI translator that is using our own terminologies, railway environment-specific terminology. And this is now massively used. And of course, we are managing the time responses towards our customers in a very much short time, of course.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. So this is real daily.
It's a daily way,
impact,
exactly.
And I enjoy very much the taking away the boring tasks.
Yes.
So we can devote our time to something
Exactly.
more valuable. So I go back to you, Luis. So from GMV, what has been harder than expected in AI adoption? Seems you're getting all the questions on hard and barriers. And
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry about it. But you can also talk about the good things if you want.
Yeah. We've been in this arena for 40 years, okay? I mean, we started working with artificial intelligence in the 80s. It was a different technology, but we know the distance between research and development and innovation and deployment, and there's a long way. The main reasons why in the 90s we already were working with neural networks and the like in industrial applications, but simply we didn't have the data, we didn't have the microprocessors, we didn't have the electronics, and it didn't work, let's put it that way. But now for, let's say, 10 years or more, we are deploying these technologies in different environments, like in aerospace, in guidance and navigation systems, artificial vision, for helping guidance different vehicles, in defense, building intelligence from different sources of data, from electromagnetic data and the like. In the fraud detection, for instance, working with insurance companies or finance companies, detecting patterns of this fraud and in real time raising flags for events. In healthcare, we are embedding AI systems or solutions inside medical devices, a long way, like I said, this experience, and also in robotics, autonomous robots and the like. So my first reflection is that the difficulties depend on the domain. Okay, it's not the same, the healthcare industry and the defense and so on. It's totally different topics. But I would say from the technical side, you will find from this initial concept to the deployment, you find difficulties in the data, availability of data, quality of data, data integration, labeling, and so on. you find the difficulties in some infrastructure like communications. Sometimes something that works in a laboratory, when you deploy it in fleet, you don't find the environment adequate for these products to work quickly. And there is a very significant difficulty barrier during the validation phase. I mean, artificial intelligence, these technologies are not deterministic by definition. There's a lot of probabilistic, and this raises the issue of trust in the solutions that you're building, particularly when these models get more and more complex. So in many cases, we see the practical way to opt for narrow, very specialized, very controlled models. And in some cases, the solution can keeping the many in the loop. So maybe the realistic option, at least in the short term, is not a total substitution, but see the assistance as an assistant to the operators and keep the safety levels at the threshold that you are ready to live with. And then, of course, there are other issues which are classical in IT adoption, which are the organizational barriers. So you work with the innovation department and everything is fine, everybody is happy, and then when you want to deploy it, you see that the data owner, the system owner, is another guy from the OT department and the like, and they don't endorse, they are not ready to incorporate all these solutions. So this is another classical issue. You have to be clear that you're working with the right people. And finally, the last mile comes from the governance and regulatory issues, that it is completely critical in some environments. But something that is, I think, amazing in these last years is it is the anxiety that we are experiencing with the speed of change. I mean, we are told that these new models are doubling capacities in 6 to 7 months. That's the way it is, and we humans are not exponentials. We are analog by definition, and really to evolve as an individual at this pace is really difficult, and as an organization is a huge challenge. So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, humans are those that are not
Yes.
so fast in in this whole sphere. That's true. And so culture and getting a culture across the organization is key, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And bottlenecks, Manuel, that you have found in your implementations?
That's a tricky question, because talking about bottlenecks in a technology that is 18 months old, I mean, not the traditional AI, but more the Gen AI, that's what everybody's talking about, and the agents. So we go back, 18 months, 24 at most. So we are still learning. So there are a lot of bottlenecks, not just because we can or we don't know how to do that, but just because we are now starting to learn how to implement that. Are there technology bottlenecks? Yes, for sure there are technology bottlenecks still. You were mentioning that everything changes every 3 months. So really getting used to a technology, when you start thinking that you know and that you can manage the technology, it changes. And then it goes a different way. I was just looking before coming in here, how did the share price performance of Anthropic perform? And if you look at the last 3 months, it went up from $400 to almost 12, in 3 months. So that's a really exponential adoption. So technology bottlenecks, I think they are, because the technology is really running fast, really fast. And therefore, there are at least a couple of things that organizations need to adjust to. How do I set up my data in order to manage that? One thing that, I'm sure you have heard it very, very often. So in an AI model, if you put garbage in terms of AI, you will get garbage out. So really managing your data, it's key, and that's the first thing that you need to do. And what is amazing is that if you go to most of the organizations, not really anyone has a really perfect data architecture, governance, infrastructure in place. So that would be one of the technical bottlenecks that we have. Then you need to have, and this is coming to what John was saying, the right architecture to make things scale. So we have 2 magnificent innovation labs here in Spain and several others around the world. And in the lab, everything works, and it works really perfect. So we have robotic arms, we have financial agents. We have everything and it works. But when you want to go and implement that agent in a bank with 100 million users, deploying in 30 different countries, then things start to be a little bit more tricky. So really having the right architecture to be able to move from a pilot, POC, prototype into really a scale and operational approach, it's really difficult, and we are still working on it. No? Then you have two other topics that are also going to be key and are starting to be bottleneck. One is security. So the more you get into agents, the more you get into AI, the more you rely on third parties that are easier to be attacked. So security, it's a fact, and for sure governance. So governance is also key. It seems, I mean, it's really easy to have an agent and make it do things for you, but then you need to control that agent because suddenly you can go from one agent to 10, 200, 2,000 to 10,000, and then start to be complicated. So really managing that is a bottleneck. But that was the first topic, and that's technology. I would say that it's 30% of the bottleneck. The other 75 or 70% is more about change management within the organizations. So fully agree. We have a cognitive limit as humans, and the organizations now, they really need to think how they want to shape their strategy and shape their operational model. The target operational model needs to change. You can go and pick whatever study you want. So MIT is saying 70% of the AI use cases, they do not bring the value or they do not get the right return. Accenture just issue another report that only 1/3 of the really AI implementations fail because organizational structures. That's one thing. So we need to first adapt the strategy, adapt the operating model, but also adapt and reskill the people to be able to use and think as an AI agent. No, and that's not easy, and that will take a time. No, I'm sure probably younger generations will be easier to adopt because they are more agentic natives. Older generations like myself is going to take a little bit longer. So, but I would say that is going to be, and those are the most difficult bottlenecks. So we are working with many financial organizations trying to redesign their processes, internal processes. So when you go to technology, you realize that it's easy to implement. You will get synergies, you'll get benefits, you'll get efficiencies, 30, 40, 50, 60%, whatever. But when it comes to operating, to putting them within the operating model in a large organization, that's where it fails, and most of the projects break. Not because technology is there or because the business case is not there. It's just how do you manage that within people, no? And that is going to be, right now, is a bottleneck, but it's going to be even more when you start changing and adapting most of the processes within large organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I personally experienced that even boards at board level. So, I mean, the decision making is very much still top down, and there are many resistances towards simply the technology itself or the technologies themselves.
I mean, I can understand that. So people are still thinking that AI is going to replace you. So it's not easy to accept that AI is going to replace you. So you're putting barriers, no?
Yeah.
That would be a human nature, no? Kind of approach, which I understand.
And Jon, Manuel mentioned the fast path. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage to identify the right tools, adapt to these changing tools continuously to be up to speed to your markets and your use cases? Mm-hmm.
I would say the tools and technologies are very much depending also on the use case. Sometimes you don't need a huge capacity to have marginal gains. So we usually approach this on a case-by-case basis. Such an example, we are embedding AI within our own offering in Indra Group. We are enhancing our own offering in defense, security, industrial sectors, utilizing AI many times. You just need to embed an AI model within the workflow. That's fine. Sometimes you need to do a whole project, which is identify the data sets, interrelate the data sets, create the ontologies, which, by the way, somebody mentioned before, the semantic layer which I couldn't stress more, the importance of this phase within the AI processing. Sometimes we've seen that once you map the data sets and you identify the semantic layers, that's when you have the cognitive layer and the real knowledge that you can identify patterns and mapping. So that is a very important one. So on tools and technologies, that block of the process is very relevant. Also, I mentioned the interrelation of data sets. It is key. Sometimes you are trying to get an objective, but if you enrich it with another data set from your company or from an external data set from another company, the process even gets better. So that's also a very important one. And that's not an easy one because you need to interconnect with other data sets, even companies or even public organizations that have different structures. Or in the defense world, for example, you have security constraints, and you have to do federated access, obtain the data, do the magic, and then come back. So the data side of things has quite a bit of complexity, but I think it's key for the success of the projects. And also, we also spoke about AI modeling, and we believe that sometimes you're better off creating your own models, but sometimes you have open source models readily available in the market or open source market that you can ingest, and maybe just with a fine tuning, you get significant gains. So the point I'm trying to make is the technologies, tools that will depend very much on what you're trying to achieve, and we try to face projects with from a humble perspective. Marginal gains very quickly, and then maybe go to more ambitious ones like digital twins that require much more time, are more ambitious. But going back to tools and technology, we are believers in industrializing the AI process. We think that if you have an AI industrialized process within your company, you can not just deliver one use case. You might be able to deliver more use cases once you have that in place, because maybe you have to get different data sets from other areas in order to get a different use case. So our approach about delivering a platform that can industrialize is something that we are pushing a lot. And also on the industry side of things, sometimes the magic arrives when you merge, information from the fabric, from SCADA systems, from MES systems, and even the ERP system. We have an example recently that there was a company saying, we want to improve our working capital management. And we thought, working capital management is not actually something very industrial. But if you merge this information from your processes, from your industrial base, you identify the correct patterns, you might be able to identify things that are not working properly, things that are errors within the order to cash process that we found. And then you can identify ways to improve or remediate those things. But sometimes you're not looking where you need to look, or you're not taking the data that you need to have in place. And this is real world examples that we are facing nowadays.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I'm sure you have questions, and I'm sure some of them are about data lakes and data infrastructure and how we mix them. So maybe we open the floor. It's not there. Sorry? Okay. Do you want to, we can do it through the, or we continue. I mean, I have more questions, but I think we...
If anybody has a question here, we can make it also with the mics here.
With a mic.
Yeah.
We can get to know you too before lunch or before the next break. No questions?
No questions.
Okay, so I'll continue.
We're the villain.
I do have many questions.
If you need an icebreaker, I can do maybe. So I want to go to the point. If people are fearing AI in terms of losing their jobs, I suppose you're right in your analysis. That's what at first is being thought. But everywhere in the German government, when we established AI, the ones that were working with that realized that their jobs were getting better. Because today, a lot of people in the government, they have a lot of stupid work to do. And to increase the amount of interesting things in a working day is something that makes our employees much more satisfied. And I think the right strategy to handle with that is not to push the fear. I know, especially from the far right and far left sides in the politics, there are a lot of actors who have an interest in spreading fear. But nevertheless, I think we need to show more best practices and say, so, okay, my job is better, my working experience is better, I have more interesting things to do, because AI takes all the stupid stuff. So that would be my narrative on that. And you can show this with a lot of examples. And I think this is, from our side, a political responsibility to do this. Because else, we see that the labors and others, they really scare AI. And there is no proof that really jobs are going away. I mean, Silicon Valley is telling us that, but what have we seen over the last months or years? I'm doing an IT business for, I don't know, 3 decades, and there was always this promise, this will save jobs, but in the end, the opposite was true. You could send emails to hundreds of people, where in the former times you could only send a letter to a single person. Then you could spread with all these internet tools and WhatsApp and whatever, and everybody's working more and more and more and more. And and is AI the game changer? You don't know. In some businesses, it is for sure, in creative businesses, for instance. But I think in the end, we will see what it does. And I think our picture should be make it more interesting workspaces. You can challenge that.
I think it's a very interesting point what you made, and what we see also in Siemens is really true. The people is more satisfied because the quality of the work is being better. And what we are doing in parallel is additional training to the people. So because the people also, they are gaining productivity, they are having more trainings. Everybody likes to understand and to learn new things. So at the end of the day, what we are doing is that all our employees are doing much more things than before. When we are gaining 10-20% productivity, then they have this time also for doing more things, for learning and so on. We have also a very, very active learning path for every of our employees, in order to gain more competencies in other arenas. So I'm fully with you that it's not only about losing jobs, it's only that the people is always going to be to develop themselves to have more competencies in other arenas.
So I mean, it's not about challenging about what your assessment, which I think it's right. So the jobs are more interesting. If you look at the last EPA, Encuesta de Población Activa now in Spain, so we are starting to see the loss of white-collar jobs. So that's a clear indication that is having an impact. Is it going to have an impact? Yes, it is. I believe it's going to have an impact. Will we recover from that? Yes, I guess so. In every technology breakthrough that we have lived over the last 100,000 years, at the end we just gain productivity and everything is for the growth. That's true. You look back when the dam machine was there, everybody thought that there would be no more people, doing manual jobs and things like that, and we have more manual jobs. If you go to Excel, everybody said that we will not have any more accountants, because it's going to be much easier with Excel to do accounting, and you have more with internet and apps and everything. So nobody would use more developers, co-developers, and we have more than ever. So I'm sure that on the long term it will happen. I would say that nevertheless, this is really running so fast, and it's really such a breakthrough that we will have some years of turmoil. And that is going to be probably those years where we will get some losses on the jobs. They will need to be reskilled, and for sure they will find new demands. At the end of the day, a new technology always creates new demands, and that's the case. So every time you have a new technology, there is a new demand, and for that new demand is going to be new needs and new people that will need to fulfill that demand. But I think that we will face in the coming years some significant turmoils that we will need to manage. Having said that, yes, I think everybody is really happy because the job is now more challenging. It's fun. You can do things that you couldn't do in the past. I've got all my developers really happy to start using Claude, start using whatever, because it makes their lives easy, no? But on the other hand, our clients are asking for productivities, and that productivities comes in terms of less cost, less people. How do you manage that, no? I'm usually a positive guy, so I always see the glass half full, not half empty. So my belief is that technology, what will happen is it will become cheaper, so there are going to be more projects to be done. And the total amount of the projects in the market is going to be bigger than what we have right now. So all in all, the net is going to be positive. But that will need that time to adjust.
If I may, I also think we need to do something about it. We need to do some public policy and also internal policy in the companies, because this doesn't come from alone. We're not trained, the incentives are not fixed to create new realities, to grow into new businesses, new directions, new ways of doing things more productively. We are trained for old-fashioned productivity. So really lowering costs, So in this sense, yes, we can, of course, do, I myself feel, and in my company, we do much more with less people. So because we're an SME, we're growing with less people and we're being very creative. But in bigger organizations, you need to create a new culture around this, which is not there yet. And I think there is work to do also from the public side on this event. Please, you have a question too?
Question.
The last one would be, I think.
Bernd Willerum from Andreas Stiel, and also I'm on the board of a dual training vocational school here in Madrid. And you said earlier that you think it will be easier for the younger generation to adapt to these changes, and that it's a cultural and an age thing of, I would say, we're probably more or less the same generation. I would challenge that, because I think you also need to make, first of all, AI intelligent. And so I think what we see is there is a lot of problems in translating the process world into the AI world. And so my question would be, how do we make sure that also the younger generation, maybe they have the technology knowledge, but how do we give them the expertise to evaluate what is coming out of the AI solutions afterwards? So we've got a question, how do we make sure that we do not lose that experience, because bullshit in normally also bullshit out. I mean, that's an old IT knowledge, I think. So that would be my question to you. How do you make sure that that happens?
I fully agree, and maybe I explain myself wrong. I'm saying that for them it's going to be easier to adapt. I've got 3 kids. They are in the school, and these guys are really agent native. So for them, agentic, it's not something new. It's not something that they need to adopt. It's something that they are born almost with, and they use them on a daily basis. So in that sense, I think for them it's not going to be so difficult to embrace and co-live with an agent. So that was my point here. That was my statement. When it comes to how do we adapt the companies to agentic and AI, and how do we transform those processes, I fully agree with you. So the first thing that you need to know is to understand the process in order to be able to adapt it. And that knowledge and that process knowledge is coming from the people that it's on the job, has been there, and for sure have a history, a background, and a knowledge. So I agree. So to do the change and the change management, you need the people that know how the process works, and that's the starting point. But in order for people to be able to embrace the technology, people that are native, that were born with those technologies, grown and studying, so they are all studying with that, I think for them it's going to be easier to really get used to co-live with digital and AI agents than to us. To be honest, to me it's still some friction, no? When it comes to ask someone, like if it was a person to do something for you, and it's just a LLM.
Maybe I just wanted to support this point about the cultural transformation. I mean, we're seeing that our job is to transform this, to make it happen in the organizations in terms of change management. And what we're seeing is actually in organizations that are very much, at the forefront of technologies and AI introduction and so forth, even these organizations, significant cultural transformation is very relevant to avoid silos, for example, to make sure what is the technology that you use, what is the different AI that you use, what are the problems that you solve. I mean, not trying to, create new problems that were not there, right? To solve actually the operating model you were mentioning before, right? And I think that's really key, as we are all nothing but people, right? So we need to make sure that this transformation goes in that direction, right? In the right direction. So absolutely for that, yeah.
Okay, so it's time to close, but I have to say, if I already believed you were my heroes, now I am even more convinced after all these reflections, and I'm also pretty sure that you will remain heroes after a couple of years. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.